So here's a very simple model that came out of Never Waste a Good Crisis. The cost of generating a business outcome. We don't look through this lens nearly often enough. If a business outcome is a journey reliability, is access to a piece of asset, is an asset's availability, that is a business outcome. And the cost of it is around running it, is about operating and maintaining it, building it and designing it. Designing is about 1, building is about 10, O&M could be between 50 and 100. And yet how often do we try and turn the cost of design from 1 down to 0.9? Actually, if you doubled the cost of design to 2, then there is probably a very, very good business case if that takes 5% out of your life cycle, the net present value of which over 30 years is worth a lot more than just taking, say, 5 or 10% out of the cost. So we must lengthen our horizon as to how we look at these particular business issues. And I said, where are these changes manifesting? Here's a £120 billion industry in 10 different pots. The blue to the left on your screen is regulated. The green and the blue to the right is unregulated. And you can begin to see at a macro level, actually the yellow spots were examples where there were exemplars of how supply chains came together, how they innovated and how they shared knowledge. And I'm going to show you 3 examples of where those are. If you're regulated, you're a supply chain that has to demonstrate value over 5 years, otherwise there's someone else comes on. Actually, those supply chains responded and reacted very well. If you're a one-off supplier whose reputation, in a sense, got lost in the wind as you handed your key over, then down that private sector, sometimes public sector, one-off building supply chains demonstrably did not actually take on the change program and deliver better value. Now, I said that I would mention Terminal 5. I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time, to be given the reins as the program director, with Egan to begin with as the CEO, and with a board of directors who were very, very clearly supportive of doing something different, of creating an environment where a project the same value, the capital value as the company, if it went wrong, if actually you took what industry did as a norm, then we predicted it would be £1 billion over budget a year late and will kill 6 people. Clearly, we had to do something very, very different on T5, and we did it, and we started by creating integrated project teams. By taking some of the commercial risk off and treating that differently, we actually exposed ourselves, and unknown at the time, to a flow, an upward flow of good ideas, of innovation, and of thinking differently from our supply chain. And around this chart, the part of T5 you see on the bottom left there is not at Heathrow. That's up at Yorkshire. That was a supplier's idea, probably came from our 4th tier supplier, our specialist steelwork guy, who said, if we're going to put this up on the critical path, we need to take our supply chain, our crane operators, our architect, Lord Rogers, our engineers, and the guys who are going to be the safety officers on the day away in practice. And we very, very rarely do that as an industry. And out of that came 125 different lessons as to how you do things differently and how you manage the value and the opportunity of managing risk in that sense. The visual control tower there, that was built 1.5 kilometres to the south of its final position. We lifted it up on roller skates. We picked it up over the southern runway, and then we lifted 85 metres in the air. Again, managing risk from a supply chain's point of view and given the opportunity to innovate safely with a client team, a consultant team, and a group of suppliers, all of whom had their objective completely and utterly aligned. Taking 85% of all the man-hours of mechanical and electrical work off-site, manufacturing it in warm manufacturing spaces, added huge value. It helped safety, it helped quality, it helped commissioning it off-site, and it meant the act of construction was one of assembly when you got into that work environment. And the question is, how do you create these sorts of environments as we look forward to difficult times? I've got 3 very quick examples of industry models and 3 very quick case studies. And then that's it. Rolls-Royce, a very, very interesting example indeed. And you may think, well, what on earth am I doing now talking about Rolls-Royce? Sir John Rose, who came in the mid-1990s, saw an organisation that was making money out of heavy engineering, out of making products. The value was to make engine parts and to sell them on. And then he suddenly realised that that isn't actually how his airline customers made money. They made money by keeping airplanes in the sky. And he went from a product development organisation to a service delivery organisation, to one that was designing for value, designing for business outcome, and actually a spare part then became a cost and a liability to him as opposed to an asset. And the whole mindset of the supply chain changed almost overnight. So fly by the hour, pay by the hour is actually all about business outcome. I know McLaren's came second in that first, and this isn't about McLaren's, this is about an industry who carry forward from one year to the next about 5 or 10% of their thought process in the previous year. Only 5 or 10% of the components in this year's Formula One cars were on the drawing board 18 months ago. This is an industry that requires the best oil, the best cockpit, the best suspension system, the best tires, and they need it all and they need it now. And the only way they can do this is to relate to their supply chain in a different way. And they'll lock into that supply chain and they'll be the vehicle for their own innovations. And they've created a space and created an environment where other people's good ideas come through the platform to ultimately deliver customer value. You probably wouldn't expect me not to put up a slide of this guy and the Apple logo. These guys, interestingly, do not come up with many of their own good ideas. Actually, what they do is they take others and they create different systems and different platforms from other people's ideas. So an iPad, an iPod, and all of those products are clever ways of putting other people's ideas on their own platform. And it seems to me that if you combine these three different models of innovation, we're not here to deliver products, we're here to deliver a service. We're here to deliver business outcomes. We need to create a platform where other people's good ideas is the best route to market. And we need to combine those in whatever way our customer wants, whether it's filling in potholes down one end, whether it's creating large road schemes, or whether it's creating our transport assets that combine in different ways. And as Innovation and Strategic Capability Director Balfour Beatty, this is how we're thinking. Actually, as an integrator of supply chains, we need to be able to combine those supply chain outputs in different ways. We need to become the preferred platform for suppliers to sell on their good ideas and their innovations. And as a customer, as a client, one needs very much to be part of this. Now, 3 very simple examples before I finish. They'll all have good points, and they'll all have issues that people are discussing. Here's a mega one. Here's the M25. You know, at the time, and remember where we were in the financial cycle, the innovation around bringing banking, the Highways Agency, supply chain, special purpose vehicles to fund this was very commendable. What is happening now in terms of understanding the asset renewal program versus traffic management, batch maintenance versus the science of maintenance of our highways, I think is generating and creating different and very interesting solutions. And this whole question of maintenance, you know, when I bought my first Mini as a student, it said change oil every 3,000 miles. Actually, you know, people got rather annoyed when I only ever changed the oil probably every 6,000 miles. The car didn't break. Actually, every 6,000 miles was right. But we did it every 3,000 miles because the manual told you to do it and because no one had actually tested the science. And there's a long, long, long way to go as I look at those graduates from Imperial College coming out as to how they can recalibrate our thought process on what good quality and what good systems output is. And I'm delighted that some of the highways thinking now is around just questioning, you know, do we need the bar right up the top because we've done it that way all the time? Or do we need what is right and what's work and what provides good economics? Slightly smaller scale program, the A3 at Hindhead. I have this because early contractor input, and I was judging the major projects awards a couple of weekends ago for Construction News, and I was delighted to see that most of those that sat on top of the pile were ones that had some early contractor input. Everyone looked after the local community in those submitted. Everyone was innovative in some way and shared knowledge. But people who were incentivise people to reduce costs through the design process is still quite unusual. It's quite a difficult mechanism, microeconomic solution. People who shared savings through production generally got a lock-in of a supply chain in a much more consistent and innovative way than those didn't. So here are some examples where you can begin to see the Rolls-Royce or you can begin to see the McLaren's model coming through in real projects. And then, of course, I said I would talk about potholes. I was talking about Never Waste a Good Crisis spring of last year up at a local authority benchmarking club. And I know the representatives from local authorities here, and I happen to believe there's one from Worcester too. Here was a project that was being highlighted as a good case study around some of the science of potholes, around how you plan the delivery of potholes, how you look at a pothole as a piece of asset renewal, and how you don't just go and fill in what you see on the ground for it to be repeated in a very short sort of life cycle beyond that. And I just thought that this sort of demonstrated an industry, a client group, and a group of consultants who sat and thought about the problem of maintenance in a very, very different way. And I guess my question on this one is how many other local authorities, how many other consultants and supply chain teams have registered that there seems to be a very good solution that has occurred, and that actually this does not need too much more innovation. What this needs is knowledge share and collaboration. And I'm delighted, therefore, that the Minister has come up today with £6 million, I suspect, to do something around this sort of knowledge share and collaboration side, which is excellent. It is difficult stuff. You know, the industry did not find it easy because it did not have to change in the 10 years since Egan came around. If you look at the reports that have been written since I wrote mine, and they've all been sort of government-sponsored in a way, you've got the innovation growth team that sort of Paul Morell has looked at about a roadmap for this industry to reduce carbon. You've got the National Infrastructure Plan, and with it a cost review as to why infrastructure costs more here compared to continental Europe. You've got a review on rail costs, and you've got Mr. McNulty's review too on sort of rail structure. The plan for growth that came out in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I was pleased, had 9 points around our industry, one of which is something that we've been harking on about for a very long time now. Give us the visibility of what's out there. If there's less work to go around, 20 or 30% less, then we need to understand how this pipeline is occurring, because we need to invest and tool up for that level of work. And the second point out of these 9 was the government to reform the way it procures public sector construction to reduce costs by 20%. That is not about reducing standards by 20%. That is not going to your supply chain to say, give me 20% less, I'm going to screw you down to the floor. That is about thinking differently. That is about collaborating and bringing together the parts of our industry that know how to work well, because there are lots of good examples of it. And it's about sharing the knowledge and how that is developed. I want to leave you with just sort of 3 thoughts. As we head in an era of less work, as we are going to be asked to deliver a carbon reduction plan, and as we've been given the opportunity already for the last 10 years to change and haven't taken it up, guys, this is a crisis that we're in. And never waste a good crisis is, if you are a customer or a client here, then just think about how you procure your work for the business outcome that is going to give the taxpayer and ultimately the shareholders a better deal. If you are a consultant or a contractor in a team responding, then together, don't wait for permission to change, because change is actually your lifeline to survival through this crisis period. And for those who are going to innovate and share their good ideas, you guys will be on the top of the pile. You guys will sort of steer our path through the next 10 years, for which I'm very positive, very proud to be part of this industry, and very excited about what happens around the corners. Guys, never waste a good crisis. Thank you.